entrepreneurs are starting to see that maybe that's not how I want to live. Maybe I want to live more from an internal place of knowing who I am on the inside, right? The internal work, so that it reflects on the outside. I think that's what is really being sought by so many busy entrepreneurs. This is people are making decisions for me instead of me making them for myself. You have a choice. You get to pre-decide your yeses and your nos and the kind of life that you want to live. And I think we need to quit believing the lie that, oh, this is happening to me.
Thriving in Tandem. It's a podcast for you, the married entrepreneur that wants to win in business and marriage at the same time.
Welcome to Thriving in Tandem.
So here we are, honey, with Teresa. We've been looking forward to this interview, right?
For a while now. I'm so
since we met her in
excited.
Nashville last year. And of course, there's a lot of synergy, right? I mean, we launched our books about the same time, a lot about work-life balance issues and all that stuff. And so, of course, I mean, kindred spirits, right?
Yes.
And so, and of course, hearing her story was just, we had to have her on. So, Teresa, welcome to the show, and we're so grateful to have you.
Oh, it's so great to be here. Yeah, we're going to have a lot of fun and a lot of laughs, I'm sure.
Yes. And so let's get right to it. First question, right off the bat. What do you have to say to the busy entrepreneur?
Yeah,
Big question, right? Big question, right? Yeah.
We could explore this one for a long time, right? So
Yes.
the busy entrepreneur, I'll just go from the angle of the title of the book that I just released is Do What Matters, Live from Rest, Not Rush. And I think for most busy entrepreneurs, we use that word busy, not my favorite word, because I think sometimes we wear it kind of like a badge of honor. Oh, I'm so busy. But then I think, some of that is shifting for people. Entrepreneurs are starting to see that maybe that's not how I want to live. Maybe I want to live more from an internal place of knowing who I am on the inside, right? The internal work, so that it reflects on the outside. And I think that's what is really being sought by so many busy entrepreneurs. This is people are making decisions for me instead of me making them for myself. Yeah. The world is coming at me. And I want to say you have a choice. You have a choice. I just led a workshop this morning, actually. I was here in my local community leading a workshop, and that was the message I say to them. You have a choice. You get to pre-decide your yeses and your nos and the kind of life that you want to live. And I think we need to quit believing the lie that, oh, this is happening to me. You guys are walking that path. I've chose to walk that path. I've said, wait, this doesn't have to happen to me. I can create the life that I want to live. And I think that's, the lie we've been told or that we've told ourselves of. It has to be this way. You have to work hours and hours and hours and all that kind of thing. So that's what I would say is stop. Yeah, decide how you want to live.
Yeah, that's good. And isn't it so ironic that the typical entrepreneur wants to start their business for greater freedom to make the decisions, right? And yet, next thing you know, it's the reverse.
Yes. Yes.
So
you have to create the path you want to run on. You have to create the lifestyle you want to live. I think that's why we have so much synergy, right? You guys get it of like, we get to choose what happens to us. Is it going to be hard sometimes to make those decisions of our yeses and our nos? Yeah. Yes, it will be. I'm not going to lie to you and say it's easy, right? But you're right. People, I want to work for myself, but I'm going to have all this freedom. And then they go, well, darn, that didn't quite turn out like I planned. But it's because before they went there, or they need to take a pause and just get up on the balcony is what I often say and say, okay, wait, let me reimagine this. I call it a modern day rule of life. Like I get to create my rule of life. Once I create it, then I go live it out. And I work from that place, which is internal. I've pre-decided, I've figured it out, what I say yes and no to. And then I make all my decisions based on that rule of life. And you guys have created one. That's why you're doing the work that you love and how you want to do it. We have to adapt it now and then. It doesn't stay written that way forever. It's not written in stone, but at least it gives us a map to follow.
And so, that term busy, as you started out with, seems to drive us a lot. And it's not just for entrepreneurs, but even just, when I was in corporate, same thing. But how do we as a society even get to this point of living life in a hurry? What do you think? I mean,
I think it is because we let it come at us and we say, we feel, it's all kinds of different stories that we tell ourselves in our head. I work a lot with personality type of behaviors. I love the tool, the Enneagram. It's one of my favorite tools. And we all have different tools that we lean on. But finding out why do I do the very thing I don't want to do? I think is the deeper question. Depending on your faith background, your tradition, that comes in scripture. Like, why do I do the very thing I don't want to do? And why do I keep doing it? Well, because you're human. And, but the awareness of that can help everybody's busy for different reasons. I'm busy. My behavior would be to overwork and overgo. So I'm busy because I'm seeking that I'm not enough, and I want to fill that, cavity deep within me that says, yes, you are, yes, you are. So I'm going to overachieve. Other people are going to do it for different reasons, out of fear. They operate out of fear. So I'm going to overgo because I need to know more. And some people are going to overgo kind of to drive the bus, like they have to be in control and in power. But once we know that about ourselves, what's driving us, then we can at least bring awareness and go, wait. I need to pay attention to that. I want to slow it down a little bit. I don't need to overgo in that area. Some people are running from things in their past. And so I just stay super busy so I can ignore. So there's just all kinds of reasons. That's why, working with a coach, working with a mentor, having someone speaking into your life, surrounding yourselves with the right people is so important. Somebody sometimes needs to call out your crap and just say, like, hey, you need to stop. Cause so I think we're busy for different reasons.
Do you think it starts at a young age? Because I remember my niece, she was like 8 or 9, and she looked at me and she goes, Auntie, I am so busy. And I'm looking at her like, oh my gosh, you're like 8. Like, how busy can an 8-year-old be? But she was serious. Yes. And I'm like, that was all I could do to keep from laughing. Inside I'm chuckling, but I'm like, really? What in the world do you have to do?
Busy becomes a cover word. So just think, like, if I say I'm busy, then I don't have to say, it's almost like we use it like an emotion. I don't have to say I'm sad. I don't have to say I'm angry. I don't have to say I'm anxious. I don't have to say I'm frustrated. So I can just say, I'm so busy. And if you really listen to the way people say it, like, how are you today? Well, I'm super busy. And you can kind of hear in their tone what busy really means. Like, I'm anxious. Because we don't want to say, in the work that I do, we actually use a feelings chart because we want people to identify the true word. So can I let go of using busy as the cover word and say what I'm really, like, I'm super anxious right now because I've got a big meeting or conversation, or I need to have a tough conversation. But instead, we'll say, oh, I'm just busy today. Meaning I really need to have a really hard conversation. It could be with my spouse. It could be with my adult kids. It could be with a coworker. But instead of saying, I really have to have a difficult conversation, I'm not looking forward to it, we're not going to go there. That feels a little bit too deep. So we'll just say, I'm busy. And then we begin to believe the lie that that's what's going on.
And sometimes I think they just say it, and I'm speaking for myself, say it because they don't know what else to say and make them sound important.
Right. I'm important because I'm so busy, Teresa.
Well, that's another reason we say it, because we want to be important. And
exactly.
Because if I said, well, you're never going to walk up to somebody and go, how's your day going? Oh, it's great. I have absolutely nothing to do today. This is funny. Now that I think about it. And so I'll tell this story on my husband. I always have permission to talk about him. Most mornings.
Do tell.
Do tell the scoop. Most mornings, as my husband and I separate for the day, and he goes to do his work, and my husband is a farmer. We live on a 5th generation family farm. And I said to him today, what are you going to do today? Like, it's a normal question. Like, what do you got going on today? And he goes, I really can't think of anything. So hilarious. Because
a farmer to say that.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
that's hard to believe, actually.
Yeah, but put it in context, he just finished our spring planting, all the crops are in, and his personality is a very away personality. So to him to be able to say, he has a million things he's doing. I'm sure he's been busy all day, but for him to say, my biggest responsibility of getting the crops in the ground, they're starting to grow. Oh, they're all coming up. I'm not going to have to replant. The relief he was feeling, in all honesty, to say, I don't have anything that's weighing on me today. Yeah. That's what he was really saying. He wasn't saying, I don't have anything to do. He's got a million things to do, all the little things to fix and do and all of that, put away. So I think it's interesting how we form busy in our mind and our framework, depending on our occupation, who we are. Like you said, importance, value. And then I think we have to be careful the words that we say out of our mouths.
Yep.
Because
I
they go in our brain.
Years ago. Yeah, because this is because I used that when I was talking about using the word busy because we don't know what to say or sound important. Because I remember years ago, whenever I'd ask people, "Oh, how you doing?" and a typical response was, "I'm busy," right? As we're talking about. And so I started thinking about it. I was like, oh, maybe I need to be busy. So right, I would start responding the same way. Yeah.
And it becomes this snowball. I mean, it's no different than, it's why social media has become such the driving thing in our life, is because I want to see what everybody else is doing. And I want to live up to whatever, the Joneses are doing. Sorry to all the people that have the last name Jones, but, I want to live up to, my neighborhood, my community. What used to be the people on your block, right? Well, now it's the whole world. Wow, that's a lot of pressure. So if I can say, what do I want my life to be about? What's the meaning I have? How do I want to map this out? And yes, then I can feel busy around the things that matter. So, I do a lot. I still get done a lot in a day. It's middle of the day and I've already led workshops and had a meeting and done several things. So it's not like I sit around, in silence and solitude all day doing nothing. It's not who I am. But yet internally, I know I'm living from rest because of some measurable things that I know are right in my life. And that makes me get to go out and be busy doing the work that I feel that the word I always use is that I'm called to do. The work that's been given to me, at least in this season of my life. It might change, but right now, this is the work that I feel I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and you didn't always live like this.
No, I did not. There's a backstory, right?
There's a backstory. But I know it's in the book, but please share, because a lot of times sometimes we need these wake up calls, and myself too. I lost my first wife. Sometimes it takes tragedy to start to realize what's truly important, and we don't want people to have to go through that. And so basically hearing the story, being able to tell a story so that people can say, hey, it can happen to anybody.
Yes.
So Teresa, tell us a little bit about your backstory of how you went from living a life of rush to...
Sure. Short version is I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always been someone who just loved to create things from nothing and just kind of like, I enjoy all parts of entrepreneurship. So I'd done that early in life. And then I was also in the ministry space for about 15 or 20 years, serving in local church congregations, creative arts, worship, that type of thing. During that season of our life, both of our children are adopted. And during that season of our life, about 15, 20 years ago, our oldest, our son, began to struggle with addiction and actually passed away in 2017 from a heroin addiction. So it'll be 6 years ago in August. And, very, very difficult time for our family, for us, the 10 to 15 years before that. But what happened during that season in me was that I had to look at my own addictive patterns and behaviors. And I really had to do some deep work, spiritually, physically, emotionally, to say how, if you've ever, been in a situation around somebody that struggles with addiction of any kind, you want to control them and you cannot. And you want to control their behaviors, or you want to control their relationships, everything, because you love people deeply and we love hard. And I had to learn that I could not control that or him. I couldn't control the addiction. I couldn't control my son and his choices because it was his work to do. But what really got revealed to me was the work I needed to do. And I needed, my addictive behavior was work. I used work, and at the time I was doing God's work. I say that in quotation. So that made it even better work, right? So getting all the gold stars for that. And so I really was avoiding difficult things and just using work as the coping behavior. So during that process with Eric, I had to really do my own deep work to say what's going on in me. My husband had to do the same so that we could create a healthy relationship with our son, even though he was still in his addiction, in and out over those time periods. But what happened then was I actually stepped away from ministry and said, okay, I'm not the only one that's struggling with this workaholic behavior, with struggling with living in what more can I do? What more can I do? How can I be more successful? How can I be known? That was it, just all the bells and whistles, all the carrots that are dangling out there. When what I realized, what was really important was the relationships with those I loved. And those were getting the least amount of my attention. If I ask some busy person, what matters to you? They're going to say, oh, my family, my friends, all of that. I'm like, show me where they're at on your calendar. They're not there. I try to fit them in. Well, that's really then not the life that you want to live. And that's what I was doing. And so long story short, that began the journey to say, how can I do this differently? Using lots of different things that I knew, from spiritual formation to time management to all kinds of different things. I created the process that I have now called the Real Life Process, and just help people to say there is a framework and a way to live life differently, and to do the deeper work of knowing your real self, putting it into your real life, and then living out the work that you're to do in this season, whatever that might be. So that's the journey that I've been on. Lots of cracks and crevices in there, but that's the big picture.
Yeah, and so what stood out to me too as you're sharing your story is all basically like your son was copying your addictive behavior. It just was being seen in a different way.
It was,
right?
and that's why I always call it, Robert, coping behavior. Addiction is really whatever form it comes in. It can be shopping, to alcohol and drugs, to workaholism, to addicted to relationships, to pornography. I mean, we name the bad ones, right? We name the ones that will take your life, in my son's case, but we forget about the ones that many of us, especially in the culture here in the United States, are addicted to, which is success.
Yeah.
Which is that.
That's a big one.
We're addicted to, was your life successful? And, until you create the measuring stick for what success is, that's why my husband, who is a very laid back type 9 on the Enneagram, he is all about peace. He can wake up in the morning. It's why, God gave me the gift of my husband, because he can wake up in the morning and go, no, I don't think I have anything I have to do today. And I'm like, what? Are you crazy? I got to listen to my alarm. That's what I want to say. And then I go, no, I don't. Nothing is more important than. And that's that reminder to ground me back to say, what really matters to me? And, you know, and I know you guys have been there. Everybody has that's listening. If somebody called today and said, so-and-so has had a heart attack or been diagnosed, or they're in ER, or they've been in a bad accident or whatever, what do? You drop everything and go there.
Yeah.
But so many of us drop everything for our work, just like it was that. And, you know, we're just like, no, I got to stay till... I was the one sending emails at 2 a.m. before Gmail actually let you schedule them to go out at 6 a.m. so nobody would know that you were still working. Now they have workarounds for that. Not that I would know those things. But, you know, that was part of my behavior, was I stayed up late. I thought I was the one who could live on 4 hours of sleep. Guess what? I can't. You know, my body said, no, I don't think so. So there's lots of behaviors that we do, but you're right. Like, you know, what are we teaching our children? What are we mimicking? Eric's way of coping with his anxiety and his stress and his whole life story of looking for his identity as even a child in adoption, and, you know, all of those things. There's so much to all of our stories. So when you said earlier, Kay, about, you know, does this start in childhood? I believe some of it does. And if we never give our children the opportunity to tell their stories, live out their stories, express their stories, we can end up with lots of behaviors that we use to cope.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's very, very telling, and we got to be careful about what we're passing on to our kids. Because, as you said earlier too, you know, doing God's work, you know, I'm a PK myself, so the same, you know, I saw the same thing. You know, it's like, I think people in ministry have a really hard time with work-life balance, because, you know, the priority is supposed to be God, family, and then work. But because it's God's work, it obviously gets flip-flopped to the top, right? To number one.
And there's always an emergency.
Yes, there is. There's always a crisis. I was with this organization this morning that's a not-for-profit organization that serves people with disabilities, right? Same thing. Anytime you're in a service industry where you take care of others, nurses, doctors, hospital, you know, working professionals that, you know, it could be life and death type things, or emotional crises, or, you know, everything under the sun, like those types of industries, that behavior to everything else comes before the deep relationships or my life. And I want to flip that. I use that triangle in a lot of the visuals that I give of, you know, if work is at the top, big and wide, and then life, and then this little bitty self, it's going to fall over. That triangle has no stability. But if I build it with real self on the bottom, and then I make my choices of what I'm going to do in my everyday, ordinary life. That's the time management, weekly choices, monthly choices thing. Then work sits on top of that, and it's healthy instead of what I identify with. So it's a big shift. It doesn't happen overnight. I had a client ask me the other day, how long did it take you? It's been a while. Like, you guys know that in the work that you do, it takes a while, and you have to revisit it. Right? Yeah. And you have to, you get off, and I know you guys teach some of the same things. Like, to me, it's really important to review it about every 90 days or so, and just, you know, do some reevaluation. Don't wait a whole year. You'll be so off track.
Oh yeah, exactly.
You got to retreat and rest.
And then you'll create a new normal,
basis.
and you end up creating a new normal for yourself.
Yes,
right?
Yeah,
if you
and
wait a year.
It's better because you're telling yourself. But if you really want to live differently, and it's going to be against the norm in some ways. And how have you guys found that? How have you guys found the new normal?
I think we have to be really intentional about it. and we have like our weekly meetings. We talk about these kind of things because it's so easy to get off track. And and it could be things that you love to do, but that doesn't mean, like when we did our book tour last year, there were so many things we wanted to do and we loved, but we had to say no because there's no way we could do it all and do it well.
And that's that's
live it out.
part of the journey, isn't it? Is learning what to say yes to and what to say no to in different seasons. So if we don't revisit it on a regular basis, I love what you just said. Something I teach too, like have a weekly review, have that little meeting with yourself or with yourself and your spouse or whoever needs to be in it. And then do that on a regular basis every quarter or so. I think it's super important.
She loves our weekly meetings because I go get my latte at the shop down the street, and
it's a small little
and a great chocolate chip cookie.
Family business.
So there you go. New routine. Weekly meeting comes with a treat.
Latte and a chocolate chip cookie.
Yeah, there you go.
Which she says, "Oh, I don't want anything."
And then what'd she do?
So I come back. Yes, exactly. So now I get a large latte. And then yesterday, it was a 2-for-1 special on the chocolate chip cookie.
Well, and what you're referring to, too, I love, this is practical. So I'm all about the deep work, but then I'm also about, and for those of you who, follow scripture or know scripture, my life verse passage is Romans 12:1-2. But I love the Message version. Take your everyday life, you're eating, sleeping, walking around life, right? So that to me is like, it's not about staying in the woo-woo and the whole like, oh, we got to do this deep work. At some point, you really got to go live your life. Like you can't just stay in the deep work, right? So it's a both and. So I love what you guys are saying too about, when you're going to have it. It's on your calendar. You know the time you've set aside. You've pre-decided that this matters. I have date night every Friday night with my husband because people blocks are part of how I do time. And my hubby is my favorite person. So it doesn't matter if it's picking up pizza or going out for a fancy dinner. We don't even have to talk about it. We have to talk about what we're going to do, but we don't have to talk about if the time is there. The time is there. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. You get to pre-decide the big picture of your life, and then you put it into the applicable everyday eating, sleeping, walking around part. And it's so fun because you're not anxiety all the time about if you're living the kind of life you want to live. So,
Exactly.
Well, and it helps me a lot too with our weekly meetings because there's certain things we talk about. We talk about finances, we talk about our goals. So it gets me back on track. And then I'm like, oh, okay, here's our vision, which I need to revisit that quite often. And then I'm like, oh yeah. And then I'm like, what about this? And then Robert's like, honey, this is the direction we're going, remember? And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. Okay. Yes. I need to get back over in the right lane.
And life and work, and I know you guys talk about this too in your book, they're not separate. And I think entrepreneurs can get this idea of once I get to here, once the business gets to here, once the ministry gets to here, and I've reached this, then I'll go back and do life. Well, guess what? I'm old enough to know the song Cats in the Cradle. Like, it's going to pass you by. And you're going to go back and say, now, why was I doing? Because if I ask you, why are you doing all this? You go, well, because, it's going to build wealth for my family, the next generation. Well, how about they'd like to have you around now? That was my wake-up call. And everybody's wake-up call is different and looks different. But we all usually get one at some point in our life.
Exactly. So, Teresa, in this last few moments, so listeners, I mean, I know they get it. They listen to this podcast because that's kind of what we do. And hearing your story, they get it. They want it. So give us a little sneak peek into the real life process and how can they start getting to do really what matters. I mean, the book outlines it perfectly and do what matters. So you've got to get a copy of that. But give us a sneak peek into the real life process and how they can get started in the right direction.
Sure. Well, let me give you a little bit of a taste and then I'll give you connection. But We break it down because I'm a practical person. So we just have 4 components is what we call them. Everybody's different in where they might need to dive in. But the first component, we really look at that real self piece, needs, values, areas, what are the big rocks in your life that matter? Then we start breaking it down into, if this matters to me, say, building a business matters. A lot of entrepreneurs that listen to your podcast. Okay, that sounds really big. How do we break that down into manageable, actionable projects with action steps? So that's component number 2, real life action. Then we say, okay, we've got these projects, but we've also got an everyday life we got to live out. So now how do we manage that in our everyday life, in our calendar? And I have a system for kind of like blocking that time out and identifying what matters to go into your calendar. And then the last step is, how do I sustain it? Real life living, rest, renew, and review. So we walk through those 4 components. Some people need all of that. Some people just need a piece of it. It's kind of up to the person. And so, you can find more out about it at our website, thereallifeprocess.com. We've got some free things there. Or if you pick up a copy of the book, you're going to see a lot of resources in the book. And then we have a whole resource page that's mentioned in the book that you can get a lot of free downloads and podcasts and all kinds of things. I try to be as generous as I possibly can. And then the last thing we do is we actually train facilitators and coaches to use this content now in the work that they do. So might be somebody listening that goes, wow, this would be a great addition and tool to what I already do as a coach, as a speaker, podcaster, whatever. And I'd love to have that in my tool belt. And so we have that way that you can work with us as well.
Yeah, that was great. You did a great job with the book. And yeah, you are very practical, which is one of the reasons why I love you so much. Because
it's stuff we can take away and start doing
simplify,
right now. Yes.
Because that's why we're busy, right? Is because it's too complicated.
Yeah, exactly.
We got to simplify our life to really have a better life.
It's not rocket science. Like we do not. Yeah. And to be honest, and you guys do this kind of work too. There's nothing new under the sun, right? It's just how I've put it together. And I am a farm girl at heart. I'm super practical. So we don't have to make living our best life complicated. And I think you guys are the same way. Like, this isn't like rocket science, people. But it is revisiting it regularly and doing the work on a regular basis. Yeah.
That's why I get a kick out of it. Sometimes people are so proud of their work, which they should be, but sometimes they get so controlling about their content and all that. And I was like, there's really nothing new under the sun. It's just how you phrase it and how you package it together, right? I mean, there's really nothing.
And for many people that are in the online entrepreneurship space, and I actually had somebody tell me this last night. I was like, you're right. It's the language you give them to use, to give language to what's going on in their head. Like ours is around time blocks. You have a present block, self-care and soul care, people block, project block, and prep block. Well, I have clients come back to me and go, hey, I'm really working on my project block. So they've caught the language. So it's nothing new. Time blocking is not new. It's just the way I say it gives people ownership of their life. And so, it's all about language and identity, and now I know what to say. Instead of saying I'm busy, I can say something else, right? Bringing it full circle, but I can say something else of what I'm actually doing and working on. So it's fun work.
That's great. It is. Well, Teresa, it's great to have met you, way back, and hopefully we get to see you in person sometime soon. But thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
I mean, we could do this for a long time because, we're just,
we could. We're kindred.
Yes, we are kindred.
But we'll have to do this. Yeah, we'll definitely have to do this live and in person sometime on the phone.
Yes, for sure. Thank you for having me. It's been really fun.
You're welcome, Teresa. So as you're listening, I know this has obviously impacted you because you're still listening. So which means share this with another entrepreneur that's busy so they could build a life worth living. And of course, leave a review. And
subscribe. I'm trying to get that out. Subscribe to
easy
our
for you to
podcast,
say.
please.
Easier said than done, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So until next week, God bless you and have a great week. Thank you for listening to the Thriving in Tandem podcast. Please visit our website, marriedentrepreneur.co, for a variety of free resources to help your marriage and business succeed.
And feel free to leave us a review and share this episode with another married entrepreneur. That would mean so much to us.
See you next week.